Belgium, 1973. A man spots a glowing figure in a metallic suit, quietly moving through his backyard. Then, without hesitation, it walks straight up a wall, like gravity was just a suggestion. How would you react? Let's find out what this man did. In the annals of Belgian UAP research, certain cases stand out not just for their peculiar details, but also for the dedication of those who investigated them. Among these tireless researchers was Jean-Luc Vertongen, whose meticulous approach left an indelible mark on the field of Belgian UAP investigations. One of his most memorable cases took place in Vilvoorde, and this is from his account of the incident. In mid-December 1973, in Vilvoorde, an industrial city about 12 kilometers northeast of Brussels, a 28-year-old man experienced a series of extraordinary events in and around his home. The case was thoroughly investigated by SOBEPS, the Belgian UAP Association, and the witness has requested to remain anonymous ever since. Now the man we're talking about lived in a simple house that faced the street, surrounded by high walls. Behind the house was a small garden, about 72 square meters, enclosed by 3 tall, white-painted walls. Beyond the back wall stretched the grounds of a convent run by the Ursuline order. That night, the weather was cold, with strong winds sweeping through the area, though no snow had fallen yet. Around 2 a.m., the man was sleeping next to his wife when he woke up and decided to use the toilet, which was located in a small backyard off the kitchen downstairs. Not wanting to disturb his wife's sleep, he avoided turning on the lights and used a flashlight instead. As he reached the kitchen, he heard an unusual scraping sound coming from outside, like a spade digging into the ground. Through a crack in the left part of the curtain, he noticed a greenish glow seeping in, soft and diffuse, like the light from an aquarium lamp. The light from the garden, which at that moment should have been in complete darkness, along with the strange sound, made him move toward the window. When he parted the curtains and looked out, he saw an astonishing sight. At the far end of the small garden stood a small being, approximately 110 centimeters tall, dressed in a shiny full-body suit that radiated a greenish glow. The being's back was turned toward him in a 3/4 profile. It had a normal build, with a proportionate head, arms, and legs. Its green uniform shimmered intensely, and the witness compared it to the metallic effect seen on certain buggy cars, plastic with embedded metal particles. The being's head was protected by a transparent helmet, and from the back of the spherical helmet, a hose extended down to what he described as a rectangular backpack. This device covered the being's back from shoulder blade to waist. All the equipment had the same finish as the uniform. The clothing appeared completely seamless. There were no buttons, zippers, or pockets visible. The witness also noticed a belt. When the being moved, he could see that it had a small red rectangular box on its abdomen. The small red box, located at waist level, glowed and sparkled. The belt was about 3 to 4 centimeters wide, and the box itself measured approximately 8 centimeters in length and 4 centimeters in height, emitting a constant red glow. The being's trousers, with their lower part resembling knickers, were tucked into small, tight-fitting boots that shimmered like the rest of the uniform. No detailed facial features were visible. Its hands resembled those of a human, but were proportionally smaller. It wore gloves, and the sleeves of the suit fit tightly around the wrists after a slight bulging, similar to the pant legs. Seen from behind, the head appeared round and black, and the man believed the being had short hair. A glowing aura surrounded it from head to toe, illuminating the ground around it and part of the wall to its left. The being worked in silence, and he could not determine whether it was breathing. In its hands, it held an instrument resembling either a vacuum cleaner or a mine detector, which it slowly moved back and forth over a pile of bricks that the witness had gathered in that part of the garden a few days earlier. The instrument had a long shaft, bent at one end like a handle, with a small box beneath it. The detector itself consisted of a thick, rectangular plate with a downward curving front edge. At the back, there was a cylinder with roughly the same diameter as the thickness of the plate. The shaft was connected to the instrument between these two components. Its color was identical to that of the being's uniform. The witness heard no internal sounds coming from the instrument and saw no light emanating from it. He observed that the small being had difficulty moving. Its motions were slow, with a waddling gait, and it only bent its knees slightly. Its posture appeared heavy. Now he turned on his flashlight and shone it a few times toward the end of the garden. The humanoid turned toward him, and it seemed as if its neck was not flexible, because instead of simply turning its head, it rotated its entire body. For the first time, the witness saw the strange visitor's dark face. Neither a nose nor a mouth was visible. All he could distinguish were a pair of slightly pointed ears. The eyes were large, oval, and yellowish, unusually bright, and surrounded by a green rim. On the iris, he noticed small black and red veins. The pupil was black and slightly oval. The being blinked from time to time, and when it did, the eyelids moved down over the eyes, making the entire face momentarily dark. When the eyes were open, the eyelids were completely invisible. As the being stood there, holding the detector in its left hand and facing the witness, it appeared to respond to the flashlight's signals by raising its right arm and making a V sign with its index and middle fingers. Then it turned again, and with its characteristic waddling gait and slightly swinging arms, it walked straight toward the back wall of the garden. When it reached the wall, it placed one foot against it, and without the slightest hesitation, followed with the other, walking straight up the wall without any change in its movements, except that its legs were now held stiff. As this bizarre climbing took place, its arms continued moving in the same manner as before, and it still held the instrument exactly as it had when on the ground. Once at the top of the wall, about 3 meters high, the humanoid continued in a curved motion over the top and descended on the other side, seemingly in the same unconventional manner. 4 minutes after the creature crossed the wall and disappeared from sight, the witness saw an aura of white light behind the wall and heard a faint, creaking sound. Let us not forget that throughout the entire observation, the witness was behind a closed window. He now saw how a round object began to rise from the other side of the wall. After rising slightly, the machine stopped and hovered above the ground for 4 to 5 minutes. The creaking sound could still be heard, resembling the sound of crickets, and at the same volume. The object's diameter may have been around 5 meters. The upper half was orange, phosphorescent, and had a raised, transparent dome with a greenish light inside. The lower half was dark burgundy, with 3 horizontally placed lights. To the left of the witness was a blue light, in the middle, a yellow light, and to the right, a red light. These 3 lights blinked 3 times in succession. Around the object's circumference, the witness noticed something resembling a shower of sparks. It reminded him of sparks from a cigarette lighter. They emerged from the layer between the bright upper section and the dark lower section. It seemed as though the sparks were caused by rotation, even though the object did not appear to be spinning around its own axis. Inside the transparent dome, the witness could see a humanoid figure bathed in a bluish glow. However, no details of the cabin were visible to him. Just below the dome, the witness saw the outline of an emblem on the orange part of the craft. It consisted of a black circle, diagonally crossed by a yellow lightning bolt. The bolt was brighter than the phosphorescent orange area. Once again, the UFO rose vertically to about 30 meters in height, still parallel to the ground, and began to sway back and forth. The shower of sparks was still visible. Then, the creaking sound grew louder and turned into a hissing noise as the craft accelerated and shot straight up into the sky, leaving a luminous trail behind it. A few seconds later, the witness saw it only as a small dot among the stars. The witness did not feel any fear, even during the close encounter, nor did he sense any hostility from the humanoid. It should also be noted that throughout the entire observation, the witness did not receive any verbal messages or telepathic impressions from the humanoid. After the object had disappeared, The witness did not seem particularly shaken by what he had experienced. He sat down at the kitchen table, made himself a late-night snack, and then went back to bed and fell asleep. Besides the witness and his wife, a cousin also lived in the apartment. The witness had considered waking his cousin during the observation, but ultimately did not. The reason for this remains unknown. The next morning, he woke up as usual, feeling no particular after effects from what had happened during the night. He went outside to inspect the garden, but nothing unusual was visible. Nothing was missing, and he found no footprints on the ground or marks on the wall. The observation was not immediately reported to SOBEPS, the Belgian UFO organization, which meant that further investigations did not begin until several weeks after the event. Now for the actual investigation. It was as late as March 1974 when Jean-Luc visited the landing site. We thoroughly searched the wall surrounding the witness's garden and carefully examined the monastery's side of the wall. No traces were found. When we went to the Ursuline nuns' monastery, hoping to find evidence or clues to support the witness's account, the doorkeeper, a nun, told us that she was unaware of anything unusual happening on the monastery grounds. We asked the gardener the same question, but he confirmed the nun's statement. At that time, the surrounding area showed no signs of anything out of the ordinary. However, one thing we could confirm. The monastery's vegetable garden was positioned in such a way and was large enough that a helicopter, for example, could without difficulty have landed there. In an attempt to find more witnesses, we distributed 500 circulars in French and Flemish, placing them in mailboxes throughout the neighborhood. Residents were asked to contact SOPEBS if they had observed anything unusual during the relevant time period. We did not receive a single response. To conclude this report, it must be mentioned that this was not the first UFO sighting the witness had experienced. Several months earlier, he and his wife had been on vacation in Westende, on the Belgian coast. One evening in late August, while walking on the beach with the witness's cousin and sister, they saw a mysterious object flying over the sea. It was around midnight. The weather was calm, the sea was still, with scattered patches of fog. The group was walking along the water's edge. It was high tide, when they suddenly heard a strange sound coming from the sea, similar to a ship's horn from a medium-sized vessel. It was the witness's cousin who first spotted a flat red rectangular object, approximately 5 to 6 meters long, moving above the water near the shore. At times it disappeared into the darkness and the patches of thick fog. As the object passed in front of them, they could make out 4 very faintly lit portholes, horizontally arranged on its underside. They also heard splashing sounds as it moved over the water. The object came from the direction of Newport, to the northeast, and traveled slowly, parallel to the shore, heading toward Ostend in the southwest. The witness shone his flashlight at the object, and immediately, the lights in the 4 portholes went out, leaving only the dimly illuminated red hull visible. Ahead of it was a breakwater, directly in its path. But as it reached the obstacle, the object rose straight up, still in a horizontal position. It flew over the breakwater and immediately descended back to the same altitude above the water, continuing on its course. An interesting detail is that even as the object flew over the breakwater, the splashing sound could still be heard. When we visited the witness in July 1974, he told us that he had experienced yet another sighting, this time between Vilvoorde and Brussels. He could not recall the exact date, but believed it was one evening in April. He was driving his Ford Escort with his wife and cousin on an open stretch of road near Koningslo, when they were astonished to see what appeared to be an extra moon in the sky. Suddenly, the car's engine began to sputter before stopping entirely, and the headlights faded out. He attempted to restart the engine, but to no avail. Later, when the luminous object moved away, the engine restarted on its own, without any action from the driver, a phenomenon often reported in connection with UFO sightings. When all was said and done, Jean-Luc concluded that it was unfortunate the witness hadn't reported the incident to SOBEPS earlier, noting that an immediate investigation might have shed more light on the matter. While the Vilvoorde case remains one of Belgium's intriguing UAP reports, it also reflects the meticulous work of SOBEPS investigators like Jean-Luc Vertongen. Known for his relentless curiosity and provocative insights, Vertongen's approach often combined rigorous skepticism with open-minded exploration. Jean-Luc was known for being an untiring provocateur, insatiably curious, with encyclopedic knowledge. He was a key figure in the early days of SOBEPS, leaving a lasting impression on everyone involved. His dedication, boundless energy, strong character, and frankness were unforgettable. As Léon Brenig put it, he embodied rigor and humor, skepticism and enthusiasm, rationalism and mysticism, an explosive mix. Jean-Luc played a key role in shaping SOBEPS from the ground up. Alongside Michel Bougard, he helped create the Investigator's Guide, a 40-page manual first published in InfoSpace in 1973. It didn't just guide SOBEPS, it became a blueprint for UFO research groups across Europe for years to come. In a heartfelt eulogy, Patrick Farron remembered Jean-Luc not just for his investigative rigor, but also for his profound reflections on the UFO phenomenon. Despite his boundless curiosity, Jean-Luc remained skeptical of simple explanations, believing that UFOs had nothing to do with extraterrestrial dimensions, but that something else was undoubtedly at work. What was it? No idea. And that's kind of the point. The guy thrived on the fact that there wasn't an easy answer. He didn't solve the puzzle, he just made sure you knew the puzzle was a lot bigger, weirder, and more complicated than you would ever think. Farron noted how Jean-Luc's sharp mind embraced ambiguity rather than fearing it, often challenging his peers to look beyond conventional theories. These reflections often concluded with one of Jean-Luc's thunderous, unforgettable bursts of laughter, the kind that fills a room and lingers in memory. His sharp wit and deep philosophical curiosity left an enduring legacy. His influence continues to shape UAP research in Belgium today. But here's the question. What do you think about this idea of something else? Critical thinking drives us to search for causes, to trace effects back to the depth of patterns. But what if causes are just the surface, visible signs of laws we don't fully grasp? What should we make of causality when the effects seem strange or unpredictable? Could it be that something else isn't an unpacked given, but an entrance to the yet-to-be uncovered? Or did Jean-Luc mean for us to throw away the lid of the puzzle box, file down the edges, and stir up the atoms? Like always here on Stories Lost, feel free to make up your own mind. Let us know what you think in the comments. This week, we would like to welcome our new members, while also extending a big thank you to all of you who are already members. We would also like to thank you for the coffee, and give a big thanks to our new patrons. Take care, and we'll see you next week.